In case you missed it, we are now in the home stretch, the last quarter of the year. And I wanted to share with you 9 tips to make these last 90 days the best 90 days of the year. I'm going to start with a confession though. If you're like me, if you're anything like me, this was about the point in time in the past when I would put my life in cruise control. I'd kind of convince myself that, there are only a few more months left in the year. I'll start in the new year. I'll start in January. And I'd kind of just cruise through the rest of the year. Either I'd be really disappointed with myself and feel like I didn't achieve any of the goals that I set out to achieve. And so what's the point of trying? I'll start fresh in the new year. Or if I had been crushing it that year, then I'd kind of convince myself that, you've worked really hard and there's really no need for you to keep pushing. Now you can relax a little. And so I would cruise through this last quarter. And yet, what a waste of a whole quarter of a year, a whole 3 months. Because what I can tell you is that in 90 days, you can literally change your life. You can literally achieve so much in 90 days. And we often kind of really focus on, a year. I need a year to achieve my goals. But it wasn't until I actually learned about a new way of goal setting, and I actually became certified as a 12-week year coach, which really focuses on making the most of every 12-week cycle, every 90 days. And so what I'd like to share with you is 9 tips to really make the most of the next 90 days to help you maximize on these last 90 days. But I also want to say these tips aren't just for the last 90 days. It's for any 90 days. One of the things that fundamentally changed for me was when I learned about the 12-week year, about how maximizing every 12-week period is what really leads to success. Because all too often, especially when we use annual goal setting, it's very tempting to think, I have plenty of time. A year, I have plenty of time. And if you've ever heard of Parkinson's law says that the work expands to fit the time. So if you have a year to achieve something, it'll probably take you a year. If you're given 3 months to achieve something, you will figure out how to achieve that goal within 3 months. And so it's really changing your mindset, changing how you set your goals from annualized goal setting to really doubling down on making every day, every moment matter. And by doing that using 90-day cycles. So I'm going to share with you 9 tips on how you can make these next 90 days the best 90 days. Number 1 might surprise you. Number 1 is be kind to yourself. What? You're saying? How's that going to help me achieve my goals? Well, here is a true fact. We are so hard on ourselves. We speak so unkindly to ourselves. And if you think about it in any circumstance, when do you achieve the most? When you're being beaten up and you're afraid of making mistakes, or when you're kind and compassionate? It really is about treating yourself with kindness and with compassion. And yes, you may be disappointed with how the previous 90 days went, or maybe the previous 270 days or whatever it is went. But now is the time for you to reassess, recommit to your goals. And you do that by being kind to yourself, by being compassionate to yourself. So rule number 1 of making these next 90 days the best 90 days, start with kindness towards yourself. Number 2, when it comes to making the most of these next 90 days, is have a clear goal. Oftentimes, we don't achieve our goals because our goals are kind of airy-fairy. We don't actually know what it is that we're going after. Is it something that I can actually measure? How will I know when you've been successful? How will I know when you've actually got there and you've achieved success? So be crystal clear about what the goal is. Just by having clarity about what the goal is will help you start to think about ways to achieve that goal. And something else that's really important is write the goal down. Research says that you're 42% more likely to achieve a goal if you have it written down than if you don't. And it's not just about, oh, write it down one time and then forget about it. Every single day, look at that goal, refresh that goal, look at what is it that I can do today that moves me towards my goal. And so number 2 of the 9 tips that I have for how to make these next 90 days the best 90 days is have a goal, have a clear goal, and make sure that you've written it down. Number 3 tip that I have to make these next 90 days the best 90 days is asking yourself, who do I need to be in order to achieve this? Who do I need to be? You see, most of us work towards a goal. It's like, oh, this is my goal. And when I get there, then I'll be that person. Instead, we need to work from a place of, if I'd already achieved that goal, how would I be behaving? What are the things that I would be doing? Who would I be if I was already there? And work not to the goal, but work from the goal. Work as if you're already there. How does that kind of person who's achieved that goal behave? What are the things that they do consistently? So number 3 is, who do you need to be to get to the goal that you want to get to? Number 4 is something that if you've ever read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you know that one of the habits is to start with the end in mind. We talked about being clear about the goal and what the goal is, but do you know what the end actually looks like? What does it look like when you get to the end state? What does success actually look like? Be clear. How will you know when you're there? How will you know when you've got to that goal? What does success look like is a really important part of helping propel you towards it, because now it sets your subconscious mind towards, this is where we want to get to. This is where I'm trying to get to. And I know it may sound like it's kind of the same as having the goal, but it's slightly different in that this is hyper focused on what does it actually look like to have got to the end, and starting with the end in mind. Starting, as I said in our previous point, with being there already. What would it look like if I was already the person that was whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, whatever the goal is? So number 4 tip is always start with the end in mind. Start with, what does success look like? Number 5 tip of the 9 tips to make these last 90 days the best 90 days is have a plan. Have a plan. So great, you've set out the goal, you've decided what the end looks like. What does the end look like? And now have a plan. What does that look like? What does it look like in terms of action items every day, every week, every month, every 30 days? What does that actually look like? What are the steps, the tangible steps, the tactical steps that you need to have in place, that you need to be achieving every day, every week, every month in order for you to get to the goal? Now, something else, and related to our point 1 about being kind to yourself, is know that it's not going to be a straight linear path and everything will go according to plan. Have a plan, but be willing to be flexible with that plan, because everything's not going to go exactly as you plan it. Things will change. But if you have a starting plan, then when things don't go according to plan, you're more able to adjust than if you don't have a plan at all for how to get there. If you don't have a plan, how will you ever get there? So point number 5 is have a plan. Have a plan for how you're going to achieve your goal. And point number 6, which is tied to that in terms of how you can make these next 90 days the best 90 days, is track your progress. Now, I get a lot of people who say to me, oh, I don't like tracking because it's triggering. But if you're not tracking, how do you know if the plan is going according to plan? You won't know until you get to the end. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I should have changed course. That's why it's so important as you're going along to be tracking your progress, to be looking at what's working, what's not working, what are the things I need to change, what are the things that I need to double down on that are really working well for me. So that is point number 6. Track your progress. It is feedback. Look at tracking as feedback. Don't look at it as judgment of yourself. Going back to point number 1 of being kind, don't look at it as judgment. Look at it as it's feedback on, am I on the right course or do I need to course correct? So that's number 6. Have a plan. Number 5 is have a plan. And number 6 is track your progress against that plan. Number 7 is something that y'all know I love to talk about. Everything you have, everything you don't have in your life is about your habits. It is about the things that you consistently do every single day. And now is a great time for you to look at, okay, what are the habits I need to have in order to achieve my goal? What is it that I need to do every single day consistently over the next 90 days that'll lead to my success? It's also a great time to look at what are the habits, what are the things that I'm doing that are detracting from my goal, that are going to move me away from my goal, that are going to lead to me not achieving my goal. It's always a great time to be looking at your habits, looking at things you consistently do, because your success is ultimately about your habits. So what are the habits that'll lead to you achieving your goals over the next 90 days? So that is tip number 7. What are the habits you need to create? Tip number 8 of 9, when it comes to what are the best things that you can do to achieve success over the next 90 days is don't strive for perfection. Don't strive for perfection. Strive for progress. If you're doing all of the things that we talked about in points 1 to 7, if you have a clear goal, if you've thought about who you need to be, if you've started with the end in mind, you're working a plan, you're tracking progress, and you've created the habits that you want to create in order to achieve your goal, then you're doing your best. Always do your best, and your best is good enough. So really strive for progress, not perfection. And being able to track point number 6 of tracking and measuring. If you're tracking and measuring, it gives you that feedback that you are making progress. That's why it is important to track, because then you're able to objectively look at the fact that, oh, I did make progress. Oh, I am moving forward. And it's about progress, not perfection. Point number 8, not striving for perfection, instead striving for progress. Point number 9, tip number 9. Tip number 9 for how you can make these next 90 days the best 90 days is celebrate yourself. It was one of the most surprising things that I learned in my certification as a habits coach. And I was learning this from somebody who has studied behavior and who has studied habits for 25 years at Stanford University. And he said that one of the things that he saw in the people who were able to successfully achieve their goals was that they celebrated themselves. It's something that very few of us take the time to do, celebrating ourselves, celebrating our progress. Because that gives you that little bit of a high, that little bit of a dopamine kick that says, oh, pat myself on the shoulder. I'm doing a good job. And the way that you're able to tell whether you're doing a good job, of course, is all of the other 9 things that you've done. The fact that you're being kind to yourself, the fact that you have a clear goal, that you've decided who you need to be, that you've started with the end in mind. You have a plan. You're tracking and measuring. You've created the habits that are going to lead to your success. And the fact that you're striving for progress and not perfection. And if you're doing all of those 8 things, then number 9's a slam dunk for you. Celebrate yourself. That's my number 1 tip, which is number 9, is always acknowledging your progress and always being grateful to yourself and to circumstances in life for everything that it is helping you to learn and helping you to grow. So those are my 9 tips for how you can make these next 90 days the best 90 days. Thank you so much for making me a part of your day. And as always, I want to remind you that you absolutely are worthy to be, to do, to have whatever it is your heart desires. I'm Sandra Chuma.